Montana. The year was 1885. This is a fictional Western romance inspired by the spirit of the American frontier. While some historical events are referenced, the characters and story are dramatized for entertainment. No graphic details are included. The focus is on resilience, survival, and human dignity.
The air was thick with the scent of dry buffalo grass and ancient pine needles. Silas Miller stood by his horse. He was a man of 55 years. His face was a jagged map of hard winters and ruthless summer droughts. His beard carried the color of cold wood ash.
His hands were rough. They were scarred from a lifetime of wrestling, survival from the dirt. He lived alone on 300 acres of rugged, unforgiving land. His wife had passed away 10 years ago. Since then, the house had been a tomb of silence. The only sounds were the haunting creak of the floorboards. The only music was the wind mourning in the chimney. But today, the silence was broken. Beside him stood a young woman. Her name was Mei Lin. She was barely 20 years old. She wore a robe of deep royal purple silk. The fabric was heavy. It was embroidered with delicate gold flowers that seemed to shimmer in the dying light. It was a garment from a world Silas had never even dreamed of. It looked like a miracle dropped into the dusty, gray landscape of the American West. She stood there with a quiet, terrifying strength. Her dark hair fell down her back like a river of spilled ink. She looked at Silas with eyes that had seen too much blood and too little mercy. She had come from the foggy, dangerous streets of San Francisco. She had escaped a life of shadows in Chinatown. The city had been a cage of iron bars and shattered promises for her. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 had turned her people into ghosts. It was built on fear. It stripped away dignity. It made many people feel invisible. She was a stranger in a land that wanted her dead or gone. But Silas Miller had wanted her to live. He didn't want a servant. He didn't want a trophy. He had found her shivering at the train station in Missoula. She was lost. She was terrified. She was a small bird caught in a mountain blizzard. He had offered her a seat on his wagon. He had offered her a warm meal. He had offered her a roof that didn't leak and a door that locked from the inside. Now the valley was talking. The whispers traveled faster than a prairie fire in July. They called her his shame. They called him a senile old fool. They said a man his age should be looking for a headstone, not a girl. But Silas didn't give a damn about the wagging tongues of the Bitterroot. He looked at Mei Lin and saw a soul that matched his own brokenness. They were both survivors. They were both pieces of drift timber washed up on the same shore. Mei Lin stepped closer to him. She placed a small porcelain hand on the worn leather of his saddle. Her touch was lighter than a feather. "Why do you keep me here, Silas?" she asked. Her English was hesitant. It was a soft melody in the harsh mountain air. Silas looked out at the mountains. The peaks were turning a deep, bruised shade of indigo. "Because the house was too quiet," he replied. His voice was like gravel rubbing together. "And because I think you have nowhere else to go that isn't a grave." Mei Lin looked down at her purple silk sleeves. They were stained with the red dust of Montana. "They hate me in town," she whispered. "They look at me like I am a demon or a ghost." Silas turned to face her. He reached out to touch her shoulder, but hesitated. He didn't want to startle the only beauty left in his life. "In this valley, we all have ghosts, Mei Lin," he said. "Mine just happened to be buried in the graveyard behind the barn. Yours are still chasing you. But they'll have to get through me first." Mei Lin looked up at him. There was a flicker of something in her dark eyes. It wasn't just gratitude. It was trust. It was a feeling Silas hadn't felt in a decade. He felt a warmth in his chest that the Montana sun could never provide. She was much younger than him, young enough for the town to call it a scandal. The world called it a scandal. The world called it a sin. But in the wilderness, the rules of the city didn't apply. Here, life was measured by the heartbeat of the person standing next to you.
The weeks turned into months. The brutal summer heat began to bleed into autumn. The nights grew crisp. The air began to taste like snow. Maylin learned the rhythm of the ranch. She learned the language of the animals. Every day, the place felt a little more like home. She eventually folded her purple silk robe. She placed it carefully in a cedar chest at the foot of her bed.
At first, Maylin saw Silas as a protector, nothing more. She trusted him. But trust slowly became friendship. Friendship became comfort, and comfort became the feeling she looked for every time he walked through the front door. She replaced it with a simple wool dress. She wore a denim apron that smelled of flour and wood smoke. But she kept the silk. It was the only piece of her mother she had left. Silas watched her bloom in the isolation. He saw the paralyzing fear leave her eyes. Not all at once. Some nights she still woke from nightmares. Some mornings she refused to leave the house. The past did not let go easily. He saw a genuine smile touch her lips for the first time. She loved watching the colts run in the high meadow. She called them spirit horses. One afternoon, a neighbor rode up to the gate.
It was Jedediah Thorne. Thorne was a man who carried his religion like a club. He believed in the letter of the law and the weight of his own arrogance. He didn't bother to dismount. "Silas," he barked. His voice was like a saw hitting a knot in the wood.
Silas walked out to meet him. He felt a cold stone settle in his stomach. "What can I do for you, Jed?" Thorne pointed a trembling, accusing finger toward the porch. Maylin was standing there. She looked small against the vastness of the house.
"That girl shouldn't be here," Thorne spat. "It ain't right in the eyes of the Lord. It ain't natural for a man of your standing to live with a heathen. The town is talking, Silas. They say you've brought a plague into the valley."
Silas felt his jaw tighten until it ached. "She's a human being, Jed. She has a name."
"And she is under my roof." Thorne laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "Under your roof? Is that what you call it? The folks in town have a different word for it. They're saying you've lost your mind to lust."
They're saying we don't want her kind breeding in this valley. The law of 1882 says she doesn't belong on American soil. She's an illegal, Silas. Silas stepped closer to the horse. His eyes were like cold flint.
"I don't care about the laws written by men who have never known hunger," Silas said. "I don't care about the opinions of men who have never known loneliness. If you have nothing else to say, ride off my land," Thorne sneered. He adjusted his hat.
"Don't say I didn't warn you, Silas Miller. Trouble follows that kind like a shadow. The valley won't stand for this forever." He turned his horse and kicked it into a gallop. Silas stood in the settling dust. He felt a hand on his arm. Maylin had come down from the porch. Her face was the color of bleached bone.
"I heard him," she said softly. "He is right about one thing, Silas. I bring you nothing but trouble. The law is a wall I cannot climb. You should send me away before they burn this house down."
Silas looked at her. He saw the tears shimmering like diamonds in her eyes. His heart broke into 1,000 pieces. He thought of the 10 years he had spent talking to shadows. He thought of the empty chair at his table.
He thought of the way she sang soft Chinese lullabies while she worked. He took her hands in his. They were freezing. "I've had enough of right and wrong from men like Thorne," Silas said. "You are the only good thing that has happened to this dirt in 20 years.
If trouble comes, it has to kill me first." Maylin leaned her forehead against his chest. She began to sob. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of absolute relief. For the first time in her life, someone was willing to be her shield.
For the first time, she wasn't a problem to be solved. She was a woman to be loved. That night, they sat by the roaring fire.
The wind howled like a wounded wolf outside. The old house groaned under the pressure of the gale. Mei Lin told him the truth about her journey. She told him about the father who had died in a collapsed tunnel in the gold mines. She told him about the Rock Springs massacre. She had heard the terrible stories from Wyoming only weeks earlier. She told him about the boat ride across the dark, terrifying ocean. She told him about the men in San Francisco who treated women like cattle. Silas listened. He didn't move. He just held her hand with a grip that promised safety. He realized her life had been one long, exhausting battle. He realized his ranch wasn't just a farm. It was her fortress. "I am an old man, Mei Lin," he said softly. "The sun is setting on my life. I cannot offer you much. I cannot offer you a fancy life or a city with paved streets. I can only offer you this land, and I can offer you a heart that will never betray you." Mei Lin looked into the dancing flames. "The city was a prison with golden gates," she said. "The land is big. The land is honest. And your heart is the only home I have ever known." She looked him directly in the eyes. "I choose you, Silas, not because I am afraid of the world, but because I am in love with the man who stood up to it." It was a moment of pure, raw honesty. The age gap vanished in the glow of the hearth.
They weren't an old rancher and a young refugee. They were simply two lonely people who had finally found peace. Winter arrived with a savage vengeance. Snow piled high against the windows. The valley was cut off from the world by a wall of white.
Inside the small house, there was warmth. There was the sound of laughter. Mei Lin taught Silas how to use chopsticks. He was clumsy. She laughed until she cried. Silas taught Mei Lin how to read the stars in the Montana sky. He showed her the North Star. "That's how you find your way home," he whispered. They were happy. It was a stolen happiness. But the world outside was still hungry for cruelty. In the spring, when the ice began to crack, the world returned. A group of men from town arrived at the gate. They were led by Jedediah Thorne. They were accompanied by a man in a black suit. The man held a document with an official seal. It was an order from the federal marshal. They claimed Mei Lin was in the country illegally. They cited the Exclusion Act. They wanted to take her to a detention center in the city. They wanted to deport her back to a country she no longer remembered. Silas met them on the porch. He had his double-barreled shotgun in his hands. He didn't point it at them yet, but his finger was resting on the trigger guard. "Go home," Silas said. His voice was low. It was dangerous. "She stays." "Silas, don't be a damn fool," Thorne shouted. "You can't fight the United States government." "You're an American, Silas. Act like one." "I am acting like one," Silas replied. "I'm protecting my family." "I'm fighting for the woman I love." The men went deathly silent. The wind died down. Mei Lin stepped out from behind the heavy oak door. She was wearing her purple silk robe again. She looked like a queen standing in a field of mud. She stood tall. Her head was held high. "I am staying," she said. Her voice didn't shake. "This is my home. This is the man I love." The men looked at each other. They saw the iron resolve in Silas's eyes. They knew he would kill or die on this porch. They saw the quiet dignity in Mei Lin's face. They were simple men. They were used to bullying the weak in groups, but they didn't know how to handle a man who had found his purpose. They didn't know how to handle a woman who had found her worth. The document was incomplete. Half the names were missing. The witness who filed the complaint had never even met Mei Lin. The marshal knew the case would likely fall apart in court. Then he looked at the shotgun. Then he looked at the woman in the purple silk. Slowly, one by one, the men turned their horses. Thorne stayed for a long moment. He looked at the old rancher. He saw something he would never possess. He saw a bond that was stronger than prejudice. He saw a love that made the law look small. He turned and rode away without a single word. The threat didn't vanish forever. The laws of the land didn't change overnight. But in that valley, under the infinite Montana sky, they were left in peace.
They lived their lives on their own terms, Silas Miller and May Lynn, the old man and the girl in the purple silk. They proved that love doesn't follow a calendar.
It doesn't care about the color of your skin. It doesn't care about the language you speak. It only cares about the quiet moments in between the storms. It cares about the way a hand fits into another hand. It cares about the way a house becomes a sanctuary.
Their story became a legend in the Bitterroot Valley. It was a story of courage and devotion. It was a story of a choice that changed the world, one heart at a time. As the years went by, the town stopped whispering. They started seeing the beauty of what had been built. They saw the vibrant flowers May Lynn planted around the porch. They saw the way Silas looked 10 years younger every spring. They saw a family where there had once been only a ghost. If this story moved you, please leave a comment with the word love. It lets us know that these stories of sacrifice and dignity still matter today.
Don't forget to hit the like button. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in love again. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for spending your precious time with us today. We hope this story brought a little warmth to your soul.
Be sure to join us for our next video. We will be exploring the mysterious life of a woman who traveled across the plains in a covered wagon. She carried a secret that changed the history of a small town in Oregon forever. You won't want to miss it.
Until next time, keep the fire burning. Keep your heart open. Goodbye for now.